Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal are in front.
Arsenal commit to attacking performance by chasing the game for 88 minutes. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. We want attacking football. We want dynamic, progressive football. Push the ball up the pitch. Get men into the box. Ensure that we are putting the opposition under pressure. And what better way to do that than to gift them a goal in the second minute, ensuring, therefore, that you will be chasing the game. And I just want to say, it was a delight to be chasing the game with not 9 men, not even 10 men, but there were, lo and behold, 11 Arsenal players on the pitch. Unfortunately, the outcome was not what we would have hoped for. And that's something that we will certainly get to and probably try to figure out how to distinguish between the outcome, the performances, and where we fall between those two. I think that's getting tricky. When you're winning every game and you're playing really well, it's easy to know what you think. When you're still playing pretty well, but not winning, and in fact not drawing, and in fact losing every game, it gets a little trickier to decide what you think, and we will try to pull that apart, as well as maybe pulling apart some refereeing decisions, among other things. So, real quick, we are going to talk refs a little bit today, but we are going to have a full-throated debate about VAR and referees and the state of the game with the rules, the laws of the game, all that on Patreon this week, so that we can really dig into it without ruining an Arsenal discussion. We'll sort of separate that, segment that out, and make it its own Patreon pod. We'll also have a second half rewatch of the Villa game, which I think will be an interesting watch, as well as our Premier League roundup. So if you want to join us there, we'd be delighted to have you. And that will be it for the sponsored content today. Paul's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And Tim's on Twitter, Roberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Hello there indeed. Okay, let's just dive into this right away. And Clive, I want to start with you. There are things that happen in a game that make it hard to analyze the game as normal. Going down to 9 men would be an example of that, like we did with Wolves. Another example of that can be falling behind very early and being put into a posture where one team can defend more deeply, more compactly, more extensively than they anticipated, and you are playing a game that is more focused on trying to get back into the game for the entirety of the match. And that obviously is where we found ourselves today. So, not today. We don't find ourselves there today because we're not playing today. It's where we find ourselves discussing today. So I'm curious for you how you feel the early goal, the concession of an early goal, set up the patterns of this game, and if maybe that influenced a little bit of the way we saw ourselves play, especially with some of the challenges we had in the final third.
Yeah, my feeling is, and was, that's the perfect start for Villa. That's what they like doing, right? So they did well against us on the counter-attack at the Emirates. If they get the first goal, then they can do exactly the same thing, and they beat us properly at the Emirates, and they were able to do that successfully again. And I think Villa have beaten us 3 times now on the row, with a similar style of play where they score and then they hold on. They held on pretty easy in the Emirates game, but at least we've had some pressure in the other 2 games, but we haven't managed to score against them in the last 3 games, I believe. So they have a way of defending their box. They barricade, and Tyrone Mings is a very good deep line centre back. In fact, he gets very deep, sort of John Terry style, actually. John Terry, if you ever watch him defending, he does defend really deep in his box. He goes in front of the goalkeeper. He really is a block merchant. And Tyrone Mings is, very similar in his defensive style. When you get him into wide spaces, he's not quite as good, very similar to John Terry. So we played right into their hands, really, by just not turning up on time. And it's really frustrating. Coach's responsibility to get a team ready to go, but game plan. But it's really hard to sort of dictate how people are going to be. If they're going to be awake, those little things, those soft factors. Are you awake today? We have a plan how we're going to play. They obviously took a stinging from West Ham. They've come out firing into us, knocking us around, smashing into us. We're not going to be dictated to. Let's dictate to them. Let's play at a high pace. Let's get really physical. Let's get them going. They've got bad discipline. Let's get after them. Let's kick them. Let's push them. Let's give them a bit of chat on the way, on when we're walking away from them. Let's see if we can get them down to 10 men. That's what I would say. Do you know what I mean? And let's see how they react to it. And if we get the first goal, then let's be, ultra physical and we'll break. That's exactly my team talk if I was Dean Smith. And of course, what do? Cheers, lads. There you go. There's the goal. 2 minutes in, let's just set the play nicely, give you a goal. Do you want me to go into the goal?
Well, but, I mean, can I ask you a question just super quick? I have seen it said that this is a lack of concentration issue. And I think there's an attempt to sort of not create a narrative. That makes it sound like an agenda, but I think sometimes our brains work where we want to find patterns. So people say, we failed to concentrate at the end of the first half against Wolves and it cost us, and we failed to concentrate at the start of this game. I don't think it's concentration. I think it's a right-sided player on the left side, early in the game, hasn't had a lot of touches, and just body shape doesn't hit it right. Maybe you could say Holding's not concentrating because there's a bit of ball watching there, but this to me just seems like an error, not a lapse in concentration.
Yeah, 2 or 3 mistakes in every goal. Firstly, Martinez drills a lovely ball into centre mid, which cuts out a couple of our lines straight away, and they manage to retain it. Clip a ball into the channel. Gabriel knocks it down to Cedric. Cedric tries his best to open his body out to put it onto Gabriel's left foot, which doesn't hit it right. Gabriel's got a choice now. Do I drop or do I go and smash it? Or do I just run up to it and let someone run past me? He chose the latter. So run past him. And this is the bit that's really not great, right? So you've got one man in the box. Very simple. Rob Holding got one man in the box. He's 3 yards away from you. And you just do a quick look over your shoulders, have a look around who's behind you. No one's behind you. You've got 4 or 5 of your mates. With the boys on the edge of the area. What do? First thing you do is you just go right next to Watkins and you just touch and feel, right? You just feel him so he can't get any movement without you blocking him. He just looks at the ball and then he crosses it. And then when he goes to block it, he doesn't close the distance. So when you don't close the distance, you're open to deflections. You see when good blocks, or just look at the distance. It's not luck. It doesn't go deflects in. They go close, so the ball comes back out. If you go far away, then the ball can deflect off you, and that's exactly what happened. So, bad mistakes, bad concentration, bad quality actually, bad quality on the touch, bad decision from Gabriel, but maybe he's the least to blame. And Rob Holding, who's a decent defender, when work comes to him, when he has to search for work. By that I mean reading of the game, go somewhere before it arrives, then that's where he struggles. When the ball comes to him, deep line, corners, heading the ball out, when the work comes to him, he's really good. But he doesn't search people out, doesn't naturally move them. It's the same problems, mate. Been there for years. I've spotted them before. And we conceded. And then we're watching a different game, aren't we? We're not even watching a game we can analyse because now we're running after it, which is a real shame. Yeah.
And so, Paul, I guess, certainly if you want to weigh in on whether you think that's concentration, it's an error. The funny thing is you'd expect me to just want to get...
I'm with you on that. I think it's a mistake of a player who doesn't normally play those angles, those positions, and leaves it short and is punished way beyond that particular error. But that's how it goes.
That's becoming a feature, by the way. Look, every single team makes a mistake in every single game. And in the last 2 games, our mistakes have cost us 2 sendings off, a penalty, and a goal that is and it's everything, right? They latch onto the ball right away. He makes the perfect pass into the box. There's a defender in position. It hits him in such a way that it's taken directly into the corner. Yes, suspensions also, thanks Clive, suspensions. We're being punished as fully and aggressively and excessively as possible, which, if you're into like BDSM or something, that could be thrilling, but when you're supporting a football club, it's certainly less fulfilling, and I don't know why I went there. But so, setting aside the fetishization of meting out punishment, I think...
Whatever happened to a little kiss, a little cuddle?
Yeah, it doesn't all have to be slap and tickle. So, look, this is great. This is good free-flowing podcasting, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I feel like this should have been a Manscaped ad, but we're not doing one today. So... Yeah, look, I mean, and we do get thoroughly punished by it. I think the player for me that gets impacted most by this development is probably Smith Rowe, actually, because when the game is a little more stretched and there's a little more space between the lines, it gives Smith Rowe more opportunity to find the space between those lines, stitch it all together, and we've seen him do that in a lot of games. In this game, similar to what we've seen in games where we've been chasing, Partey and Shaq were able to get a lot more forward on the pitch, and I don't know that there was as much space between the lines for Smith Rowe to operate, and it gets compressed. So are there a few ways that you think our general way we'd like to build play or how we'd like to attack may have gotten short-circuited by the fact that Villa could defend a bit deeper and we had to push further into their half?
Well, I think building play was probably the strongest part of our game. I think moving between the lines, we were very, very good.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's when we got into the final third, the decision making. Like, we had really good combinations in the final third, but they were over at the edges of both sides of the box. There was some nice interplay between triangles of whoever might be there, Saka, ESR plus one other, or Saka, Pepe, and whoever. And that bit was really good. But in the middle, now you have to give Villa a lot of credit. We talked about it in the instant reaction pod, but like they were really against a Newcastle or somebody like that. If we'd had those chances in and around the box against their centre backs, fucking Mings was there every time, first there to cut danger out, etc. Sometimes you just got to give some props to the centre backs. They were everywhere they needed to be, the big fucking loafs. But our weakest part was our decision making just as we're going into the box. Crossing when it needed a cutback. People making the run at the right time. And let's be honest, I know we've had a few good games, etc., but we haven't had a season of playing the way we're playing right now. It's kind of all new. And the hardest part, as Van Persie memorably talked about, the quickest decision-making happens in the box. The striker has a fraction of what an attacking midfielder has, who has a fraction of what a midfielder and a defender has. And it's not quite orders of magnitude. Maybe it's a bit linear. But once you get into the box, decision-making has to be automatic, quick, patterns develop. We've had a lot of change, and we're new to this toothpaste being all the way up the tube. Now we've got to work out how best to apply to the brush. And we created a lot of good opportunities. We talked about pre-creation. The pass before the pass is where things went a little wrong. The assist before the assist. And I don't know that there's a magic fix for that apart from, Pepe. We've only rehabilitated Pepe into the lineup as a semi-starter, and it's all different. And he's playing from a different side. During this game, he switches. So there's a lot of patterns been evolved and developed. We brought on Odegaard. We played with basically wasn't quite two attacking eights, but could have been ESR and Odegaard running around. So it was all new and different. And we're not good yet at what happens when the ball comes into the box, is my assessment of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely... Look, we're a team that scored 27 goals in 23 games. Now, I realize if you look at what we've done from an attacking standpoint since the Chelsea game, it's totally different. So you almost have to look at it like two different seasons. But... when we get into the center forward discussion a little bit later on, we will be talking about another game where Alexander Lacazette had no shots. Not that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang came on and lit the world on fire, although he had a chance that maybe he could have done better with. We'll come to that. Tim, I think I have to agree with Paul. I like the way we built play in this game. I still think, look, if I just forget the scoreline for a minute, just forget wins and losses, and you say, I have to watch the Villa game again, or I have to watch any game you want to pick from November, December, I'm picking the Villa game 10 times out of 10. The football is imminent. It's just imminently more watchable. It's imminently more coherent. The players are in positions that seem natural. The ball moves at the right pace. Thomas Partey, I think, has had a massive, massive impact on that. The way he draws in players, shifts past them, pushes the ball up the pitch. Granit Xhaka has been sort of revitalized by that. Smith Rowe, who I thought was a bit quiet in this game, but again, his movement and creating another option has been really valuable. The Pepe thing is interesting because a lot of moves came to Pepe and either died there or got really exciting there. It was sort of back to one of those games with him where it's hard to measure between the fact, well, he's one of our most exciting players making things happen, but also a lot of moves are stalling at his feet. So, would you agree that the issue here was that once we got the ball into the final third, and especially when it came to Pepe, there was just a lot of sort of looseness and sloppiness with that final ball that prevented us from really creating the chance we needed?
Yeah, a little bit. And I can't really ask this question without jumping ahead in the running order and talking about strikers. I'll try and avoid the meat of the discussion. But I think essentially what we've done, we've introduced that number 10 into the team, and we've got more presence between the lines. But we still don't have enough presence in the box. I think that's the issue. I've said for a long time, I think capitalising on periods of at least territorial dominance has been a big problem for Arsenal under Arteta. They're just not getting enough goals for even the time they spend in the final third. Now, in November, December, even getting in, and before that, probably getting the ball into the final third was a massive effort because we didn't have that number 10. We've kind of sorted that now. We can get the ball into the final third, but now there's another bit to bridge that gap, and that's having more presence in the penalty area. Ian Wright did a really good bit of analysis on Lacazette on Match of the Day on Saturday night for viewers in the UK and anyone else who can see Match of the Day, where he kind of talked about, he kept showing the moves where Lacazette was coming outside the box, often combining fairly well, but coming into an area where Saka and Smith Rowe were already there. And this isn't a criticism per se. I get that. That's what he wants to do. He wants to come short and come and riff with his teammates. But then Ian Wright kind of, with the graphic showed penalty area, 4 Villa defenders and Pepe. And that's the problem, right? For me, I think if you're playing a 4-2-3-1, you've effectively got a front 4, your front 3, and your number 10. I still think the balance you want there is broadly. Obviously, this is quite a vague, wide, broad description, but I think broadly you want 2 creators and 2 goal scorers. I think that's what you want in a front 4, and I don't think we quite have that balance. I think. And this might sound weird considering where we were a month or two ago. We've kind of got the balance now where we've got the creators, but not really the scorers. Because Lacazette can do both. I mean, he is our top scorer. He has scored quite a few goals this season. You could also say that Arsenal's attacking became less promising when he came off, but it's almost like we need 12 men, right? We need what we've got and another in the penalty area. We can't just have Pepe, we can't just have Aubameyang there. Smith Rowe's a creator. I think Saka can do both, but he's still, to me, he's part of the build-up. He's like I guess he reminds, and this is quite the compliment, I guess he reminds me a little bit of Robert Pires, not so much in his style or anything, but he can do both. You want Robert Pires as part of your build-up, but he can finish as well. Yeah. But primarily he's part of your build-up, and that's where I see Saka. It's I don't see Saka. Saka can be on the end of a move, but I think largely you want him just as involved as much as possible because he's so good. And so for me, that's where the balance is wrong. We need that extra penalty area presence. Smith Rowe can give it to us sometimes, I think, but again, his primary job is creative. So and I know we're going to have this discussion.
It was funny watching Joe Willock crash the box to score for Newcastle, by the way, just as you mentioned.
Yeah. And that's a great move for him, by the way, because Newcastle don't want the ball. They don't want their midfielders really to build possession, and they've got really slow midfielders like John Joe Shelvey who just stand in the centre circle. So that's a great move for him because he can just do that. And like I don't think he'd be able to replicate that at Arsenal so much. But it's for me, it's about penalty box presence. There just isn't quite enough of it, and you can see that we're just not scoring enough goals. And if you take this game, Brighton away, Palace at home, Wolves away, like all of them have been tight margins, and some of the margins have gone our way and some haven't. Like Wolves we could have won, Brighton we could have lost, Palace we could have lost 1-0, we could have won it 1-0. Like we're back in like a little bit where we were under Emery, where like we were really, really playing with the margins. And what we need is more penalty box presence, so that when we have our 15 minutes in a game, we score twice, or we score at least once. Maybe I see that as like maybe the next issue for Arteta to fix.
Yeah, and so Clive, I'll let you build on that if you want, but I also want to talk about another issue then that came up with build-up. So when Villa were in their low block, I thought we moved the ball forward pretty well, and we created some chances, as we've discussed. Look, we've talked about this all season long. Breaking down a deep defense is difficult, and even the best teams struggle to do it at times. But there were times when the game got stretched, and there were times when we made the wrong choice. I think of Lacazette on a really good counterattack, holding the ball too long and trying to slip it to Saka on his right, and having that cut out when Pepe on the left was probably the easier option, the earlier option. There were a few moments like that. But let's face it, when the game got stretched, when it looked like we were cutting through them a little bit, Villa's plan A was rotational fouling. And I don't think you can look at this game without, in our failure to get the goal to get us back into the game, without looking at rotational fouling as a big part of why that was. I mean, Saka specifically got targeted, and there was just a lot of kicking players when they were running at Villa, running at the Villa midfield or back line. So I feel like rotational fouling is such an effective strategy because in general, referees are just never going to give the volume of cards you'd have to give for that amount of fouling, because they could literally be sending off 1, 2, 3, 4, you name it, 4 players by the end of the game. So, is that a big part? I hate to throw off responsibility. It's Arsenal's fault that Arsenal was down 1-0. No one else's. And it's Arsenal's fault that Arsenal didn't score a goal. There were presentable chances that we didn't take. The Odegaard one in particular comes to mind. But, when you're telling the story of the game and analyzing why we struggled at times, I don't think you can elide a discussion of the fouling, and that can certainly lead into some very questionable refereeing decisions. So before we really broach the refereeing topic fully, do you think the rotational fouling in particular was a big part of the challenge we faced?
It's the next challenge, right? Because Saka's been targeted, and that's the next challenge for his career. Much like Grealish is targeted every single week and was struggling until Barkley came along and they could share getting kicked, right? So they could start passing the ball to each other, which creates a double problem, and that's why they've been more successful this year, alongside a couple of other smart additions like a new goalkeeper and a good right back. So yeah, that's what's happening there. So is it a big deal? I suppose they decided that was a strategy that works against Arsenal, because Arsenal have got discipline issues, react to these things historically and recently, and they wanted to re-establish themselves, as I said earlier. So is it a problem? It's only a problem when you don't officiate it really correctly and you allow these things to continue. I don't think we could do anything about it. They did it smartly. The referee kept his cards away, so they kept on doing it until the cards come out. And that's the game. We've seen that right way back to the 50th game. That's exactly what happens. If the referee creates the environment by which you play, and we're getting to referee discussion now, which I don't really want to go into, but the created environment which we play, every game used to have its own temperature. Now it doesn't have its own temperature, because you get pulled over to a screen to decide exactly what should happen, depending on the day, which is an inconsistency in itself. So yeah, it's one of those problems. I don't think it's a major factor in the day, Elliot, if I'm honest with you. I think the forward thing is a bigger issue. And I think, to build on Tim's point, our issue really, he summarised it by saying penalty box presence, which is we could all see that there was nothing in there, basically. And But if you want to take it back a little bit further, it's the issue for us is secondary movement. So when we do that build-up play, Lacazette comes short, sets the play. He doesn't spin. He doesn't turn around and get aggressive and then fill the box. He decides, that's my job done. But he's now coming into an area where there is a 10. So he's basically coming into an easy area where it's an easy pass. And he's almost subcontracting out his centre-forward role. So someone else needs to get in there. I sometimes feel, is it a plan? So why are you coming short when there's bodies there? Stay high. Take responsibility for the number on the shirt, on the back of your shirt. Take responsibility. You're our number 9. Take number 9 responsibilities. Don't take the option of showing the man your shirt number and just setting the play and not getting into the box. And he's our top scorer, by the way, 10 goals and 27. So for me, he needs to take more serious his role. And also our movement in the box is just flat. We just stand there. We don't have movement. Did anyone see the Rashford cross to Cavani sometime in the week when he just divided the 2 runs, bang, back post header? Very simple. Cross. We have loads of crosses, don't we? But we don't have that movement. 1 run, short step, moving forward as the ball's coming. As you're moving forward, you get a better jump, header, goal. Very simple. We do not survive well in the box. Our secondary movement is shocking. Our movement, ability to shake people, separate people, gamble, near post runs. We just stand there like under 10s in the box. And it's been a consistent thing. What's happening? The team is evolving. It's just evolving, and the problems are evolving with it. A couple of months ago, we were talking about shots against, all shots we were conceding. Then it went to like centre midfield, passing backwards. We had the old stats of like playing in our final third a lot, square passes around the horseshoe. Then it was like, okay, we're spending too much time in our final third. I think it's about 32% highest in our final third. Then we start talking about we ain't getting enough shots. Then we went to the old crossing issue. Then we went to creativity issue. Then we put a number 10 in. Start playing 4-2-3-1. We're good. We're now building up. Shit. Our forwards are not standing there. They're not there. They're not there where they need to be. Our efficiency in the last third is poor. The team is evolving. And I don't want to quote Paul's saying, but the problem's going up the pitch. And every time the team evolves, we start to look at what's not working. Is our fullbacks crossing properly? Is our centre forward controlling the ball properly? Is he moving correctly? Is he efficient correctly? Is he even there? And I think this is an evolving situation, but it's actually a good thing because now we're not talking about build-up, creativity. We talk about something else. And I think eventually we're going to realise exactly what the rebuild's going to require because of how we're playing and the habits that have been introduced and the evolution of the team. And I think that's the real eye-opener from this game, actually, because Villa really showed us who we actually are and where we're actually lagging.
Yeah. And I think based on the topics we want to get to in this podcast and the fact that a 4-hour podcast isn't as fun as it sounds, we probably won't get to, I think, heap enough praise on the Arsenal players who deserve it, because I think naturally when you lose a game, the focus tends to be on what we didn't do right. And a lot of that is going to be in the final third, apart from one momentary mistake by Cedric. I do think, Cedric has been a competent stand-in for Tierney. And by the way, where I stand on backups. Backups are not supposed to be the same level as starters. I mean, it's nice if they wind up being that way, but they're meant to be competent stand-ins, and I think Cedric has been. There's absolutely no question that we miss Tierney's contributions in the final third on the left. Even if you think Cedric can be better than Bellerin in the final third on the right, and Bellerin has become a really polarizing player, as they all seem to at some point or another. I don't think Cedric can do that on the left as much, and we missed Tierney in this game, and I think it led to some interesting substitutions that arguably hurt more than they helped, and we'll come on to that. I thought Thomas Partey was excellent, and Paul, before we get too stuck into the refereeing side of things, just really quickly, for me, he and Saka are really the best players at Arsenal right now, and what Partey does is something that, I said this on the Instant Reaction Pod. I am very vulnerable to being won over by analytics arguments and stats-driven arguments. I think there's going to be a reckoning a bit of, where stats can evolve and where they can develop. There's some places where I think they're obviously exceptionally valuable, and you see the teams that use them thriving with them. But I think we know central defenders, for example, the stats for that still evolving, still not particularly effective, goalkeeping a bit. There were a lot of questions about Leno from an analytics standpoint, and I think he's been fantastic. Central midfield's another one. Thomas Partey doesn't do the things that necessarily fill up the stat sheet, so to speak, but he, with a little shimmy, with a little move, with a little sense of when to step past a defender and turning defending into attack or turning the recovery of possession into a chance to play forward, he transforms the way we build play. And I think it would be a shame if we didn't just take a minute to sort of celebrate that and then maybe also wonder, where we stand with this guy from an injury standpoint. He hardly ever was injured at Atletico, and now this seems to be an issue. And I think, reading now, Chris Wheatley, I think, said he's in line to be able to play at the weekend. And my fear is, does that put Benfica in jeopardy? So do you want to just quickly maybe take a moment to sort of praise what Partey is doing and question a little bit about where we stand with this player in terms of utilization and what we should do for the next 2 games?
Yeah. So, I think you have to be a hell of a player to not play particularly well and still be highly beneficial. And we talked about this before, I didn't think this was anywhere near his best game. I think he flubbed kind of a lot of situations, passes, etc. And yet he's this reference point, this North Star for how we play in midfield. And I thought some people still don't see this performance from Xhaka as a good one. I thought Xhaka was great in this, but he's great because him and Partey are great because that provides a balance. Partey can do whatever he needs to do. There's nothing Partey can't do really as a deeper lying midfield who can get forward. He can hurt teams in so many ways, and whatever he does quickly, decisively. He can play from either side to either side, do what he wants with the ball, ping it. He takes risks. They don't all come off. And, part of the reason that maybe I'll look at a game like this and say he didn't have his best ever game is because he's always going to try stuff. And this was a game where we had to try things. And if it didn't come off, 9 times out of 10, we'd get the ball back anyway because that was the flow of the game. So you try your stuff. And I think I tend to want to look at every game as a Xhaka Partey performance in midfield. And I don't really care which one of them had the better game as long as overall that pairing works. And I think I said before we really got going seeing this partnership in midfield that they would find their own balance and it would change from game to game, or at least that's how I kind of hoped and imagined it would work out, because they both have their strengths and they can't both be doing all their stuff all the time. The game doesn't allow for 2 guys pinging at both sides all game long, or I mean, it'd be nice, but you're not. Yeah. It's going to be rare you have 2 players just lighting it up, zipping it between the lines. One's kind of got he's feeling it. He's the quarterback today. I'm going to play off him. I'm going to vibe off him. I'm going to provide a little more defense, a little more cover. Xhaka can get forward. Xhaka can drop really deep, but you'll see, there were a couple of moments I saw Partey drop exactly into that left back spot you associate with Xhaka, because Xhaka was on the ball and doing stuff. But Xhaka always has more room these days than, or at least in the games we've seen recently, than he's had at any time before. He's no longer the guy you trigger the press for, not because he wouldn't be the guy you'd pick. It's just because we got enough going on around him, aka Partey, that we're not under pressure in midfield and we can hold our own. And they're both pretty beefy, so you don't think, I'll go and you don't set up a plan to bully this midfield, at least not in that way. So. I think it's a testament to a guy that he's not firing on all 4 cylinders, and he still makes our midfield tick, and he's this reference point for everybody. And we have structure that we have not had in a long time. We might have had a one-off game with a Ceballos or whoever, but game in, game out, there's a structure to our midfield, and you can't say exactly how it's going to be because Partey will play almost not quite box to box, but he'll be the guy upfield shuffling, or they'll play in line, or they just kind of riff it a little bit depending on which side of the pitch is going. I mean, Xhaka's gonna hit the left hand side 9 times out of 10, and he's got the outside swinging left pass, and so that kind of tells you where he's going to be. And Partey, depending on what's going on in the game, finds his spot either further forward. I think that piece works really well between them.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we've seen Granit Xhaka for a long, long time, and anybody who's listened to this podcast knows I'm not a Xhaka guy. I think when all of a sudden Granit Xhaka looks really, really good for a run of several games, and it's when Thomas Partey starts with him as his double pivot partner, you got to just give Partey some credit for being the kind of player that allows you to get the best out of Xhaka, because Xhaka is sort of, again, we've had a lot of these, right? Goldilocks players who can look really bad if the situation is wrong and look pretty good if the situation is right. And it turns out that Partey is good enough to create a situation for Xhaka where he can thrive. And I think it's about responsibility. You know, when a defender or a man is marking Partey, he can step past him, he can pull another man to him and give it to Xhaka with more time to operate, more of a field of vision ahead of him, you know, where he's not the one who has to pick up the ball in the first phase under pressure. And maybe he's watching Partey and emulating him a bit more because it feels like the ball's coming out faster from Xhaka too, you know, that he's moving it faster. These things are always tricky to evaluate. And Granit Xhaka feels like he's got 9 lives because every time you're prepared to say, all right, that's it for him, something happens that pulls him back into the team and into one of the better performers in the team. But I think Partey deserves credit for that. So Tim, we move into a section of the podcast that I hope will not be the cut and thrust of the whole thing, but I think it is important. You know, we touched on the rotational fouling and what it did in this game in terms of breaking up our play. So I want to kind of break out the refereeing thing into a few little mini discussions without, you know, getting too far down the rabbit hole in this. The first thing is, I think I speak for the whole podcast when I say you probably come to the wrong pod if you want us to say there is a conspiracy against Arsenal, that referees have decided to punish Arsenal, don't want Arsenal to win, and game in, game out are doing their best to ensure that doesn't happen. So none of us believe that.
That's a relief.
Yeah. I think none of us believe that. It can be true that we've had a bad run of calls go against us. I want to make one quick point about that. Whenever these things go around, right, people will circulate still shots or video clips of clearly wrong decisions against us. And I want to be clear, they infuriate me too. They get my ire up. I get emotional, visceral reaction to them. The one thing that nobody does, understandably, is there's no video clip or photos circulating of the times we got off easy. We had a decision go our way. A referee ruled in our favor in a 50-50. And I realize it feels right now, because we're in a run of a few really, really painful decisions, that never happens. It would be interesting to have sort of an objective observer, a non-Arsenal fan, and a neutral, the dreaded neutral, really go through it and say, okay, guys, you're right. You had 8 really bad decisions go against you this season that really cost you, but what you're not realizing is you had 10 that went for you. Because we don't remember those. You don't remember the times you got away with it. So that definitely clouds it. I think there's sort of a survivorship bias, I think would be the logical bias there, right? When Arsenal gets away with it and the decision goes in our favor, we don't log it. But when Arsenal gets screwed by a decision, we log it, we remember it, we circulate it on social media. But Tim, I guess what I would say is, if not a conspiracy, is there a way you can sort of explain what does feel, candidly, like a really bad run of some calls going against us? And in particular, in light of VAR, and I've got a theory on this, but I'll stop talking because I've been talking too long already. But because obviously, like, the Lacazette one comes to mind. Emi Martinez has grabbed Lacazette's shirt, pulled him onto him. They've gone down. The foul's been given on Lacazette, and upon further review, the foul's still been given on Lacazette. The non-red card on Saka, I don't want that to be a red card, but we've all seen situations, Granit Xhaka comes to mind, where it's been given. So do you have a sense of why maybe, apart from conspiracy, which we don't believe, we're in this position where we feel very aggrieved by a lot of decisions that candidly do look like they're going the wrong way?
I'd say try and find me a supporter or a supporter base of a club that doesn't feel like that.
United?
You're right. You're right. Like, you just don't log those things. So, for example, I tried to use this as an example on social media recently, because earnestly I didn't remember this, right? But the Ceballos away at Everton in December, bit of a stamp, very very actually identical to the Bruno Fernandes on Xhaka incident, just a rake down the Achilles. VAR reviewed it, didn't get sent off. Absolutely identical incident. And the reason I found that so interesting is because even I'm the bastion of neutrality.
You are.
I didn't remember that. I was like, oh shit, oh yeah, and it's like you really really don't even when you're trying to be objective, you just don't remember those things. It's just the way your brain works. It really really is, and none of us are free from that. None of us are free from that. It really is as simple as that. In this game, I can't the Lacazette thing, it could have been a penalty. I have to be honest, I think it was a little bit 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I do think as well that Lacazette, the way
Boo.
So can I stop you for a second? But I'll stop you for 1 second. This is where I think still shots are so dangerous, because if I bowl into you and then as you're falling back you grab my shirt for stability and I grab a still shot, it's going to look like I am pulling you down. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but still shots are pretty useless, and that still shot looks a lot more clear cut than what actually happened.
Yeah. So in this scenario, I think there's a little bit of back and forth that you see at every single corner. And then I think basically Martinez is trying to do what every goalkeeper does, is get Lacazette away. Lacazette does what every striker does and goes, no, I'm standing here. Thank you very much. But the thing is, the reason that I didn't really think it was a penalty. Even when I saw the replay, I was like, it wouldn't have been an error to give that. But at the same time, I understand why it wasn't. And honestly, I think this is one of those things that is just quite recent, and particularly at the moment where every single game is on TV in the UK, and everybody is as soon as there is a decision, everyone knows about it, even if they're not watching the game. And this is just one of those things that it's probably in pre-VAR, but certainly 15 years ago, nobody would even have looked at. But I think the reason I think there's some reasonable doubt here is that why would you pull someone's shirt and pull them on top of you so that you fall over when you're the goalkeeper? That doesn't make sense. What's happened? He's got a hold of Lacazette's arm, and Lacazette has gone, okay, I'm going to use this, and he's he's fallen into him, and he's trying to be okay, you've got a little hold of my shirt there, I'm going to use this for all it's worth, and I'm just going to nudge into you, and when I fall over, my shirt's going to be in your hand. That is not a natural thing to do, to pull the striker on top of you as a goalkeeper so that you fall over and can no longer do your job. That just doesn't happen.
But he's pulling the striker towards him because there's a cross coming in, and he doesn't want Laka to move towards it.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'll tell you, I agree with you to an extent, Tim, in that I think it was a penalty, but it always looked a bit soft to me.
Yeah,
and that shit does go on in the penalty box all the time. But
yeah, surely, the way I look at it is, it could have been a penalty, but those are almost never given. Yeah. I very very rarely see those given. I completely understood that, right? And it's because we're still carrying the luggage from the Wolves game, it feels very the world's against us. The Saka one, I'm sorry, it's just not a red card. The foul, and in fact, when you see it on replay, if it's swiped Saka's leg, I always kind of say in that grey area when it's is that denial of a goal scoring opportunity? I'd say as a ref, I'd let the defender make that decision. And if it's just an intentional swipe of the legs, as a ref, I'd go, okay, you thought it was a clear goal scoring opportunity, which is why you've done that. But when you look at it, it's actually accidental. I think it's a foul, but it is just a bit of a tangle of legs. I think that would be an incredibly harsh.
If Granit Xhaka hadn't been sent off at the halfway line a few seasons ago, no one would be calling for that to be red. Yeah, but we all remember that injustice. Or Louise.
But the thing is as well, Koscielny got sent off for one, and so this is where we as football fans, this is where we kind of pollute the conversation when we talk about our own teams. I can remember that Laurent Koscielny got sent off for that exactly against Newcastle, but it was in 2010. It was 11 years ago. But like we're so like,
and I want justice.
Yeah, exactly. We're so like, I promise you, in every single one of these fucking compilations people put together, they put Man United right in October. That was 17 years ago,
and they still haven't put it right. They still haven't rectified it.
Do you know what I mean? Because like our memories go back such a long way. Like our grievance tab is massive. And at the same time, when Danny Ceballos, 8 weeks ago, stamps on someone, like we get that Men in Black amnesia rate on us, and we don't remember it. Like it's just, and look, I'm not saying that referees are perfect. I'm not saying there isn't a discussion to be had about how Arsenal are seen. I definitely think, I don't think it's so much now, but I definitely think some years ago we were seen as like the weak and vulnerable team who probably deserved a bit of a kicking because that's how you play Arsenal. And I definitely think stuff like, a foul by a Burnley player is given more lenience than a foul by an Arsenal player because of the way you play. All of those things come into it. I think unconscious bias comes into it. I'd love to see some data on how, for example, players of colour are treated for certain tackles. And that's not me saying all the refs are racist. Like, it's just unconscious.
Just some of them.
Well, some of them might be. I don't know.
Sure.
But like unconscious bias is a thing that exists, right? We all have it. And it doesn't necessarily make us all bad people, but like, there are discussions to have there.
Foreign players,
like,
domestic players, England internationals, it all weighs into
it. Yeah. Like, so after the Wolves game, right, I completely understand why the Luiz red card is a discussion point. Of course, I understand why that's a discussion point. On the back of this game, it's just a bit like, well, we might have had a penalty but that's never given as a penalty. And there might have been a red card, but that's never really given as a red card other than in really rare scenarios. And just quickly on the rotational fouling, it's frustrating as hell, but the reason it's so effective is because there isn't really a good way to referee against it unless because like what can you really do about it?
You can give a card every single one that should be a card, and if the team goes down to 8 men, they go down to 8 men. I mean, you could do that.
No, but this is the thing about rotational fouling. Most of them aren't yellow card fouls. They're not that severe. They're just annoying and they break up the game. And so the only really tool you've got from a referee is, and this is what they're told to do and what they should do, is once you spot it, you talk to the captain and you say, right, from now on, even if it's not that severe a foul, I'm giving yellow cards from now on because I know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. So that's I'm going to referee the foul slightly differently from now on. Stop it. Yeah. That's all you can really do. You can't start just sending people off for like shirt tugs and that. That's why teams do rotational fouling, because it's really difficult to referee against. So that's just, it's annoying, but there's not really, unless you introduce the sin bin, which I wouldn't be against. I don't really see what you can do about it.
Yeah, I would say this: if a referee is going to get a call wrong, I'm always more inclined for them to get the call wrong where they don't intervene than where they do.
Yeah.
If you follow what I'm saying. So like if they're going to miss a red card, that's better than giving an excessive red card. If they're going to miss a penalty, that's better than giving a soft penalty. Because what I'm saying is the fewer games that are ruined by or totally changed by the referee, the better. But I think rotational fouling is the one area where I slightly disagree and think the referee can't abdicate responsibility because it is a tactic that is against the laws of the game, and teams shouldn't be allowed to engage it. 2 super quick things before I come back to you, Clive. One related to VAR. So I am a proponent of VAR. I know you are not, Tim. I like VAR. I think VAR is used terribly. I think VAR, the technology isn't the issue, right? It's the judgment. Ultimately, all VAR is a chance for a referee to get a clearer second look at something they might not have seen right the first time. Here's where I'm going to get maybe a little controversial, but this is the problem with VAR. In the past, if a referee made a bad call, Mike Dean sends a guy off. People go, he fucked it. Oh, he fucked. Look at the replay. He fucked it. He got the call wrong. But Mike Dean didn't get a chance to see that. Now, if Mike Dean walks over to a monitor, or the guy in the booth looks at the video, and the video shows what we all seem to think clearly it's not a red card, and they don't overturn the decision, now it looks like a conspiracy. Now it looks like they're out to get you, right? Because before you could say, he didn't see it. Oh, look, he was obstructed, or he made a bad call in the moment, and we rule it out as just a shit ref who needs, ref needs glasses. But once you look at the replay and don't get it right, then the injustice grows because it feels like it's intentional. And I think that slight change, and it's clearly not intentional, but that slight change, it then gets imputed to, the ref's ego was too big to overturn his own call, or there's a conspiracy, or they're protecting the referee, whatever the case may be. And that changes it slightly from the ref just blew it to the ref is intentionally going after us. The ref did something to us. And the sense of injustice, I think, is greater. And so, I think that leads to bad outcomes. And Clive, the thing with the technology is just that it makes those decision points more memorable, so to speak, because sometimes with the pace of the game, if a call is missed and they don't get a replay to the fans and the fans don't get a replay of it till 10 minutes later or even after the game, then it doesn't become as big a talking point. But when they stop the game and go to the monitor and it's replayed 10 times and they talk about it and they still arrive at a bad outcome, then it becomes a really clear talking point of the game. So for me, while I like VAR, I think the problem with VAR when it's used wrongly is that it actually ratchets up the sense of injustice instead of the opposite. Does that seem like a fair analysis of that?
Yeah, it does. And up to a point, because I think the technology has exposed the game and exposed all of us on how we absorb the game. And technology brings expectations that there's no room for interpretation anymore. You must see it my way. And the laws of the game are full of the word interpretation. And for me, the fun of the game is how we all interpret the game, how we see the game, how we feel the game. And those sort of soft factors, intangibles, is the fun. And when you bring technology in, you are expecting perfection. You are expecting 99.5% percentile. You're expecting everything to go exactly as you see it, because now you see what I see on the TV screen. And the human error factor is now gone, because you must see it my way. Actually, within that TV screen, there's still interpretation of the rules. Was Salah's penalty yesterday, was it a penalty? For me, maybe not. In the, quote, modern game, maybe yes, because defender got caught the wrong side. Is that really a penalty? I'm not sure anymore. The game's evolving, he said, as I said earlier. And I think we're getting a bit of a mess here. But I don't want to go fully into this. I don't want to, because I want to say something. We're getting a bit of a mess here, and it's causing real problems.
So maybe we can just point this out, Clive, and I think you'd be good to articulate this. It can be true that the last two games we have had some harsh calls against us. And it can be true that those calls were wrong calls, and it can be true that those calls were important calls. It is not true that those calls decided the game. Now, I know in the Wolves game, it's pretty hard to escape that conclusion, but my point is, in the Wolves game, we go to sleep at the end of the first half. They get in on goal one-on-one with the keeper. That is our fault, not the referee's fault. There is then a slight contact on the stud of the guy running. It can be given a penalty. It cannot be given a penalty. We got punished as harshly as possible. Penalty, red card. It's the wrong call in my view. But it comes from a mistake we make. Down to 10 men against Wolves, the game is recoverable. We concede a goal. All right, it's a Golazo. There's not much we can do about it. We then have our goalkeeper sent off and go down to 9 men, making the game not recoverable. That is not the referee's fault. That's our fault. In the Villa game, again, there were calls that went against us that could have made the game easier, could have pulled us back into the game. But there is nothing saying we could not. Odegaard could have finished his chance. Lacazette could do better on that counterattack. Pepe could curl that right-footed shot inside the post, not past the post. There are opportunities to score. Aubameyang can do better to get more than a toe on that cross, or his header can be more forceful. There was a good cross for him that he headed kind of tamely out. There was one where it came across and it looked like he left it for no reason. Then it bounced off Odegaard's head for a goal kick. Bad decisions, maybe less so in the Wolves game, but certainly this game, don't mean you have to lose the game, right? Like these decisions stink and they need to be rectified, but that's not why we lost to Villa. Is that a fair way of kind of characterizing it?
Yeah, I think the decisions are one thing. I think we seem to suffer the harshest consequences. We don't seem to get the benefit of the consequences. I've seen many, since Xhaka got sent off against Burnley, I've seen many sort of fisticuffs and people pushing each other. I've not seen many other people get sent off. Do you know what I mean? The consequences for us seem really, really hard. I remember Gabriel sending off, we had 2 fouls in 2-3 minutes. I've seen that happen many other times. People get the benefit of the doubt, but Gabriel's been sent off. It's the consequences of similar actions. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I read somewhere that we've had the least fouls we've committed, but we've had the most red cards and yellows or something like that. It's really on the 18th, least fouls, but our red cards and yellows are really, really high, and people know this stuff, and they're looking for reasons to blame, right? So I think there's some historical things, particularly maybe the David Luiz one at Chelsea and the David Luiz one against City. Now we know the rules a little bit more, so laws. Then we can look at the Wolves one and say, actually, that Chelsea one was really harsh, going away from goal, some on the line. I think some of this is reputational, some of this is some things that follow us. But when it comes down to it, games are won and lost in both boxes. And we do stupid things in our box, and we're not ruthless enough in their box. I bet you Arteta's thinking, he's been talking about this for a while, our lack of ruthlessness and finishing chances. And when we were losing, no one was listening. And when I mean losing, I mean the pre-Christmas losing.
Right. Yeah.
No one was listening about finishing chances. We said, we need to create more chances. We need to do more creative. We need to do this, we need that. But he's been talking about this for quite a while. The fact we're not scoring enough goals and we're doing stupid things in both boxes. Now, he shut the back door pretty well, but the front door, I just had a quick look now. Aubameyang, 27 games, 8 goals. Right? Lacazette, 27 games, 10 goals. They play 29 games, 7 goals. And Saka, 31 games, 5 goals. It's not enough. It's not enough. Saka can be excused because he's played time in defence and he's out, he's more of a creator. But those 3 top boys with the big money and the big salaries, etc., have got to do more. And that's where we're falling down. And I bet you that's what he's focusing on, because he's shut the back door, he's added creativity. Now we need to focus on what's going on in the box, right? And we can blame these idiot referees. They're still going to be there. They're always going to be idiots. I've never seen a referee get cheered by a crowd too often, right? So they're always going to be idiots. But I think we need to focus on ourselves and what we're doing in front of the goal. It's really important.
Yeah, well said. And again, goal scoring, I don't need to tell you this, goal scoring is pretty important, because when you score goals, you give yourself the ability to overcome bad decisions. This is the problem with football. The margins are so fine. It's such a low-scoring sport. And it's why the refereeing decisions do come under such scrutiny, because you can play really, really well, like we did against Wolves, for example, and the referee can take it from you or make it feel like it's been taken from you. Paul, you had a quick bit you wanted to add on that?
I just think life's unfair. It just is for everybody. And we have this expectation of fairness that we're just not going to get. Now, as fans, we can discuss it, and that's fine. We can try and work out whether it's fair or not. What I think about Arteta at the end of this, at least this was my reading, was he said, there was some stuff, but he went very quickly to the top teams don't make the mistakes we're making. You have to have an attitude that you're going to address the things you can control, and just having a sense. The worst thing is thinking, life's unfair and they're all against us, and we don't really have that much of a say in it, because it's debilitating for a team in terms of addressing the real issues. We'd 90 minutes to score a goal, 95 minutes to score a goal. That was our big issue in this. The more of an attacking team we are, the more threat we create, the more we'll get decisions in our direction, the more we'll get penalties, the more we'll get free kicks around the area, the more we'll get, et cetera, et cetera. We can worry all we like about how there might be some kind of direct or indirect bias against us or conspiracy or whatever. On the surface, it seems highly implausible. You could be going through a bad run of luck, statistically entirely reasonable, and yes, it always feels it is Arsenal, but life always feels unfair, and usually it is unfair. So you control what you can, you get better at what you can get better at, and the last thing in the world we want is this unlucky Arsenal thing to infect our squad, our team, our manager, and for them to think that the dice is loaded against them, because there's fuck all they can do about it apart from be savvy and aggressive and proactive, and just lean into playing better and better, more there's a lot of things they can do to win, and I think results will start to follow in large part. It won't be Alex Ferguson's kind of look we get going forward, but hopefully those days are gone too. By and large, get your mentality right, get positive, get aggressive, and results and decisions tend to start to lean your way, is how I feel about it. I certainly don't want the squad buying into this, oh, how unlucky we are shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be helpful after a game like Wolves so that you don't let your head go down because you played well, you should have won. The ref made a call that ruined it.
There's a way to, there's a way to say,
the world's against us, where, like a siege mentality kind of thing,
Yeah. There's a way to use it for you, but you got to use it for you. You can't be, oh my God, it's all against us.
Yeah, I agree, because then you feel like you lose agency, right? Like it's not within your control. Well, look, that's enough sticking our head up our own asses and examining the space inside when it comes to referees and decisions. Let's get to actual football again before we get out of here. And, I think as this game wore on and we were increasingly frustrated to not get the goal, Arteta did something very different than what he's done in the past. He didn't make like-for-like swaps. He continued with this thing he did at Wolves, which is sort of a fuck it, throw on the attackers, take off a fullback, bring on a forward, right? Take off. I mean, he did the like-for-like with Lacazette for Aubameyang, which made sense, but, there was a willingness to throw on attackers and try to heap more pressure on. Before we get to the center forward thing specifically, Lacazette Aubameyang, which I think is becoming a really sort of important talking point and maybe not as clear cut as we'd like it to be. Tim, I was encouraged to some extent, but I think this is where missing Tierney really hurt us, because moving Saka to left back actually worked in this game. So I can't really argue with the outcome. And you can't argue a negative. I can't, I don't have a counterfactual here for what would have happened if he didn't move Saka. I still think I'd rather have Saka on the right as a forward and someone else at fullback. And if that had been Tierney, I don't think he would have felt the need to make that swap. But he does make that swap, and it seems to work. Aubameyang, Lacazette, whatever. It's the Willian sub for Pepe. Am I right?
Partey.
That's right. Yes, for Partey, because Partey gets injured. He brings him on. He moves Pepe over to the right, and he brings Willian on, and that didn't really work. And interestingly, leaves Martinelli on the bench, and Martinelli, not a player he has used that much in the last couple of weeks. I realize he's been injured as well, so there may be other factors there. Do you have a specific issue with any of the subs he made? I mean, it's going to be easy to just point to the Willian one. What I don't want to do is lead you into a big Willian conversation, because I think you're probably exhausted of saying the same thing about Willian you've been saying all season, quite rightly. But how do you feel about the end game here? How we managed that last period of the game, chasing the game, and is that the one sub particularly he got wrong for you?
Yeah, big time. The other two I had no problem with, and let's have it straight. He was going to bring Willian on for someone else, and Partey got injured and couldn't really be asked to bring on someone else, so he went for that. And that that's kind of all right. I kind of get that, but yeah, not to repeat myself, don't put Willian on the left. But not even just that, but like that Xhaka Saka Pepe triangle was really, really working for us, and I really had a good feeling about creating definitely a big chance at least through that avenue, and breaking it up, I think, completely broke up the rhythm of the game. We started playing with two inverted wingers, absolutely played into Villa's hands, because what they wanted to do was defend the width of the box, and we were causing them problems because we had a nice spread on that left-hand side. We had Saka, and Saka is great for these scenarios because he's great at driving the ball, and when you're playing a team that sits deep, a fullback that drives on, and Tierney does that brilliantly anyway, but when the fullback's got space to drive into, and basically he just gets the ball up the pitch more quickly than Cedric can, because he's quicker and he's naturally left-footed, and that enabled Pepe to move inside, and I think we had a really nice triangle there. Then all of a sudden we got two inverted wingers. That means they're not getting in the area, they're getting the ball out wide on the corner of the area, exactly where Villa want them. They want to defend nice and narrow. We've made it nice and easy for them. Awful substitution, that last one, and I think it cost us a chance of again, like I can't give you the counterfactual what would have happened, but I think it cost us the chance to try and get a point from this game. So big mark against Arteta, I think, that substitution in particular. And like I agree. The first two, I was kind of enthused. I was thinking, okay, he's not really having to change the system that much, but he's looking at the game that's in front of him. We're playing a deep block now. Let's just get more attackers on. I think that made a lot of sense. But that, even bringing Willian on and just having him on the right and leaving Pepe where he was would have made a hell of a lot more sense to me. I don't really understand what the thinking. Like I still can't reconcile it. Nearly 3 days later, I don't really know what he was thinking.
Can I ask you just a typical Elliot question? But I just got to throw it out there. Would we be a little harsher on Odegaard if he wasn't some loanee who just arrived for us, but was some player that we've been watching play at Arsenal for 3 seasons? That's a really good chance, and he blasted a mile over the bar.
Yeah. I think Lacazette or Aubameyang would have got pelters for that. Certainly, yeah. That's probably, that was the best chance we made, and it was nice build up on that left hand side. So yeah, he's got to be at least working the goalkeeper there for sure. Yeah,
I mean, look, this is a guy who at one time was considered the best player, not the best player, but one of the best performers in La Liga last season at Real Sociedad. He's a Real Madrid player. He's, we brought him in to be another threat in that position. He comes on in a game that we need a goal trailing. He gets into the perfect position. And again, you can miss those chances, but if he puts it on frame, also there's a lot of people crashing the net. There's also, look, Emi Martinez makes a fantastic save from a Granit Xhaka free kick that was brilliantly struck. It wasn't our day. You just, sometimes it's not your day. Clive, you don't agree with my Odegaard criticism. By the way, I'm not killing him. I'm just saying that's a really good chance, and he doesn't put it on net. I just think if he wasn't someone who just turned up at the club and is making literally like his fifth minute of appearance, right? we'd probably be a little more upset.
I'll give you a scenario. We're 2-1 up, 10 minutes to go. That ball gets cut back. We haven't seen him before. He takes that shot. We all walk away thinking, wow, what technique, what power. We didn't need it to go in. I'm hugely encouraged by that shot. I'll tell you why, because my worry about him before he came was his power. Would he have enough shooting power? Would he be able to have the power to survive in the Premier League? Because he's quite slight. And the way he moves...
Clive, I can hit it really hard into Rosette. Put me out there. I can do that. No, I have the power. Maybe I can't reach Rosette. I can reach row like C, maybe.
And so he actually answered the question for me, actually. So I'm hugely encouraged by his performance in this game and what he could be, just from seeing that little snippet. And again, we want a goal desperately. We feel a little bit bruised by what's happened in the week. We don't think we deserve to lose those 2 games, and we need him to score, and he didn't score. But none of us know him. We haven't seen him live. We haven't seen him shoot. Well, I just think it's a little bit harsh. But hey, it would have been nice. Would have been the moment of the weekend without doubt. If the top quarter that would have been a brilliant goal.
It was a good move. I think that was a frustrating. Really we created the move, and he's in the right place. And please understand, I wasn't saying let's kill the guy. I'm just saying it was a really presentable chance. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about that missed chance. It's our best chance of the game.
I don't think he's a real penalty box guy.
I don't think so either.
From my research, he's great at passing into the box, but he doesn't dribble in. He's not Smith Rowe driving into the box. He doesn't have that Ramsey vibe about him. And he's scored a few goals, but I've seen him miss a bunch of that kind of situation. He's not a real killer in the box.
I haven't seen that power on any of the videos I've watched.
Yeah.
Even his free kicks are stroked. Yeah, they're stroked. Ozil hasn't got superpower. He strokes the ball, right? So I've watched him, and I see his pace of pass, and I see all this stuff. But I haven't seen that raw power. I thought, wow, that surprised me, that. Because that means, he's got different ways of taking dead balls.
You don't think it's using the ball, the speed of the ball coming to it? I mean, I once in my life absolutely plowed a ball into the net, and it was kind of like the power was off the ball. I just managed to get the timing right.
The power's in the technique, exactly. You nailed it. The power's in the technique, contact, and the timing. Yeah. And I was surprised, genuinely surprised, and really encouraged. It was one of my highlights of the weekend, and when most of my teams lost. Right, so and so that is the sort of stuff you tap into, right? And think, okay, this is interesting. Now we can set the play to you. You can do it. So I'm thinking that's a really encouraging moment. I know we lost the game, right? But looking forward, because that player looks quite interesting.
And the thing I got most excited about with Odegaard was him and ESR on the pitch at the same time, connecting, finding each other. working in the other guys. I mean, maybe it was a bit of Villa sitting back and it being game state and the phase of the game at that point. But it didn't feel like one of those players was redundant. I thought, I want to come back to the Willian thing a little bit. I thought he was okay. I don't mean great. I'm
letting you sail out on this island by yourself.
I know.
I am not going to first mate this ship.
But I have two words to say to you: Granit Xhaka. A broken clock is occasionally has some kind of a point.
Well, Willian, let's give him credit. He was fine in that second half against United. I thought he was. If you want to give credit, there's where it belongs. I don't see the credit deserved in this game.
And I think he's okay in this, just not great. And I don't know that the subs were terrible. I mean, we talk about attacking them from both sides. I mean, Saka was on the left and doing a lot from when Willian came on. And so there was a triangle forming with Saka, Willian, ESR in particular. And I'm not saying Arteta got the subs right ultimately. I think, if you bring on Auba, you either put him on the left and kill whoever you're having there, Pepe, or you bring him on for Laka. So I think we all kind of get that one. And we lost a little bit in build-up with Laka. But we were still creating. And I thought Willian was okay-ish in helping our triangles. I mean, we lacked just some killer thrust from the left.
So sometimes the reason a player is bad isn't because they're so painfully bad, but because they're less good than what you had going there. I think the reason a lot of people had problems with the Willian sub is we moved an effective player away from where he had been affecting the game positively and replaced him with a player who was not able to have that same cut and thrust and drive that the previous player had. You know what I mean? So I think
that's very true.
Yeah, okay.
I'd be surprised, though, if our rate of chance creation was we were still creating stuff. I mean, the Odegaard move, if you remember it, is, hang on a second, ESR, Saka, Willian, Saka, cutback, Odegaard. I think if you go back through it, there's plenty, 86 minutes, ESR, Willian, Saka opportunity. 89 minutes, Xhaka, Willian, ESR, Odegaard. 90 minutes, Willian, Saka, ESR. 94 minutes, Xhaka, Odegaard, Pepe chance. There's quite a lot. I think we think it cooled down more than than it actually did. I think there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm not saying Willian was great, but basically once you throw on all the attackers, there's going to be a couple of people who are not optimally positioned, and they were just they went where the opportunities were in large part, and I don't think it's as bad as we remember it, because we now had 7 fucking attackers on there swarming. And guess what? 2 or 3 of them aren't going to be. You can critique it as not being exactly where they should be.
All right. So here's the thing. I want to say something.
I'm not saying the
you have, as
criticism
usual,
is wrong. I just don't think it's massively that we lost what we think we did. There was going to be some suboptimal positions for some players to get all those players on at the same time. Yeah, we could have brought on Martinelli, but I don't think. You could argue against that Martinelli, that you just needed a bunch of raw, straight-out attackers. I mean,
as usual, you have made a very cogent argument, and I find myself agreeing with a lot of what you said. And I hate that, because I'm still pretty convinced that bringing on Willian was wrong and that Willian should be banished.
Might have been. I just don't know that it was
I get
abysmally terrible.
I think Tim's point, why don't bring him on the right? Let's just look at the player. He's always played on the right most of his career. Bring him on the right. We had the left side going.
Can I ask you a question about that? Do you think the fact that it wound up being for Thomas
to the left is the challenge?
Well, we could leave Pepe on the left and put Willian on the right. But my question to you, Clive, is: do you think the fact that it wound up being for Thomas Partey and that it wasn't the switch he was intending to make kind of confused things, and Arteta didn't really get the moment to reconsider where he's putting him on and just make the more sensible swap? Because obviously it wasn't going to be for Thomas Partey, and it wound up being for Thomas Partey.
No, so if you've got more time to think, you're bringing on Ceballos in that situation,
Right? Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because Ceballos is brilliant once the teams are pressed back, and he's got no real defensive work to do, and he can just stand there and clip diagonals over the top, little fades and little chips. That's what you do. But he's trying to keep the momentum going. We are losing. He's had an injury thrust upon him, and he's brought Winan on, and he's got a bit wrong. I personally think we sometimes overplayed the sub thing a little bit. He's not bringing on some idiot. He's bringing on a supposedly decent player that should go out there and do the job. The real question is, at some point, Arteta's going to have to stop investing so much of his reputation in this player, because it's costing him. It's costing him, and it's starting to damage him. And I think you got to say, at some point, you got to cut. You got to cut and say, okay, I know we spent a lot of money. I know potentially I was part of that decision. I know we've got wages tied up for the next 2-3 years, but it's not working. And I've got alternatives now that weren't there when we signed him. And I need to prioritise them because they are the future of this club. And he needs to do it. And that's a management decision. He needs to do it. He's going to talk to who he's got to talk to. So I sought the investment. I've tried. I can't do it. I can't do this any longer. That's the sort of thing we should be talking about. I'll tell you now, we'll be here forevermore to talk about substitutions, because if we win the game, they're right. If we don't, they're not right. Right. So, in the end, I think there's a bigger problem here around the investment from Arteta in this player. I think he needs to be really careful.
Yeah. All right. Well, so let's quickly, Tim, touch then on not the Willian issue, because ultimately, going forward, I think Willian will continue to be less of a presence in this team. I mean, he gets chances, it's not working, and eventually a coach is not going to continue to reward you with chances. But one of Lacazette and Aubameyang, at a minimum, is going to continue to get chances. I still think, based on how we're playing, Pepe, although somewhat frustrating in this game, and Saka, who is fucking brilliant, and Martinelli at times, will all be afforded chances to start on the left and right, respectively, which means it's one place for Aubameyang or Lacazette. I think the days of Aubameyang playing on the left aren't over, but I certainly think for the games that count right now, you'd probably have Pepe as the first choice on the left. Fair to say? So given that, you've got to pick one for center forward. Aubameyang was bad in this game when he came on, so let's not sugarcoat it. But, you know, I look at the Manchester United game, and Lacazette has the counterattack where he decides to shoot from 20 yards out instead of just sliding it into Martinelli. There's the counterattack in this game where he's clearly got an option to Pepe on the left, holds it way too long and tries to give it to Saka when the pass is no longer on. We give Lacazette a lot of credit for things that aren't shooting and goal scoring. But I still see Lacazette get a lot of those things wrong. And again, he's been good for the most part. He is our leading goal scorer this season, I believe. And he has been the starter during a period where the club is playing better. I don't want to dismiss any of that. But given the choice between the two, I still think the guy you have all the money tied up in and years invested in versus the guy whose contract is facing expiration, who, again, this is a game where we have all the ball, and Lacazette, 0 shots in this game. So is that the straight swap, 1-for-1? Where are you with the center forward situation? Because it feels urgent that we figure that role out once and for all.
Yeah, I'm with you, Elliot. Look, the league season now, we're not playing for an awful lot at the moment. And I know I said this last season that this is as close to not consequence free, but there's potentially less consequence in this season. Let's learn to do it. Let's learn to play with Aubameyang up front. That, like you say, that's where our kind of future is. For the left, Saka can play there. We've now made Pepe very usable there. Martinelli can play there. The left is fine. The left is tied up. There are 3 at least really good players who can play there. So let's learn to play with Aubameyang up front. I also I think Scott made the point on the Instant Reaction pod, that a lot of the stuff Lacazette does is not redundant, but it's less important with an actual number 10 in the team like Smith Rowe. And even if we could get to a stage where Smith Rowe and Ødegaard are in the team and Saka, basically, as I said earlier in the pod, we're actually kind of sorting the creative side. Well, I mean, maybe sorting it is overstating it, but there's plenty of build-up player there. So let's learn to play with Aubameyang up front. And it's one of those things where I don't necessarily think it's going to be all right overnight. we're still going to have to adapt a little bit. But I was looking at the way United play at the moment, where they've got Rashford and Martial just running, and Greenwood just running around, and Fernandes, and they just leave Cavani in the penalty area and say, that's your domain, do that. I was listening to a podcast today about Atletico Madrid, and they've bought Luis Suarez, and they're about to walk La Liga. And it's just like a wonderful bit of recruitment. Basically, what was Atleti's problem? They had a really good team. They just couldn't score goals. Diego Costa wasn't doing it. They've got Lamar. They've got Joao Felix. They've got what's his name? The winger we nearly signed. Is it Carrasco? Yeah. So they've got all these like good build-up players, and they just didn't have that point of the diamond almost. Now they've got Suarez, and he's banging away goals, even though he's 34. And because Suarez is not the same player anymore, who can't do all the things he used to do, they've just gone, don't worry about that. Just stay in the penalty area. And we've got like two, in Lamar and Felix, we've got two really young creators. We've got a quite experienced, like out-and-out winger. Let these guys do your running for you. Let them worry about how the ball gets into the box. You just stay in the box, and when it gets there, put it in the net. And that is what we've got to learn to do with Aubameyang. And I'm not saying it will be overnight. I think, let's say Arteta decides to do this next game. I think it will take 2 or 3 games at least before that's like really, really there. But I think we've got to learn to do it. And then we can talk about, how do we get Martinelli into this team on a long-term basis? And, does Pepe really have a future here, or is he someone we should be looking at selling on? But, this is a point we've made on this pod loads and loads of times, so I won't go into it other than to say, we've given him a contract till he's 34. We can't have him running up and down the left wing. Like let's do the Suarez, Cavani, or as Clive says in the chat, the Vardy thing, and tell Aubameyang, just stay in the 18-yard area, and we'll have at least 3 players do all your running for you and get the ball in the area for you. That, to me, is the way forward. And if it isn't the way forward in Arteta's mind, why on earth did we give Aubameyang a contract? It really is time. Like, it's really time to put our money where our mouth is there, I think.
Yep. And I mean, we have put our money there, so we need to put our mouth where our money is. Is that the way you'd say it? You know what I mean? Like
yeah, exactly. We've put the money down. Now we've got
put our mouth where our money is.
Shit.
Yeah, we're on the pot. It's time to poop. God, this always goes in such fun directions. Paul, I mean, do you? I guess what I want to ask you, certainly feel free to weigh in on the striker thing. And Clive, I'll get you one last thought on that before we say goodbye, but we should wrap this up. We're approaching 90 minutes, which means there's 3 people left listening. But Paul, when we were winning all our games, it was easy to call this a renaissance. Very easy to call it a renaissance when you're winning all your games. Harder to call it a renaissance when you've lost your last 2. I find myself still feeling that Arteta is in the midst of a renaissance because I still like the way we are playing. But I also am cognizant of the fact that not playing like complete assholes who are unwatchable is where the bar was pre-Chelsea. The bar can't be not playing like unwatchable assholes. The bar has to be higher than that. So am I right to still feel that the renaissance is ongoing? Is it a little murkier than that? How do we evaluate a team that, lost a lead with 9 men to Wolves and then failed to score against a pretty bad Villa side that we gifted an early goal, despite the fact that in both games I felt, one of the games we played our best half of the season. The other game I thought we looked pretty coherent the whole time. I am struggling to know if I am giving into the what do they call it? The soft bigotry of low expectations, or whether this is still pretty encouraging in the main.
We could say it's neither, and we don't have to decide that right now. I think the problem with the framework of a bar is a bar is kind of like...
You're not allowed to go there because of the pandemic?
No.
Okay.
A bar, the problem is, that's fine kind of when you're at the end of a season where you played the way you're going to play for an entire season. But like this is going to be at least 2 seasons in one. There was the team before we got our shit together and the team after we maybe got our shit together. This is a process, and I think anybody with their eyes open would say we're actually progressing now. So it's more of a trend line, right? And that's where the art is. Do you draw that line so that it's hitting this notional bar you have of where we're trying to get to and when? To me, there's definite progress. I mean, defensively, okay, we had a screw up here, but generally, our defense has been one of our more solid aspects, and the challenge was always be for Arteta. Could he keep the mostly sound defense, which is where he started, the mostly sound structure that gave the team some sense of control over their destiny, that they wouldn't be leaking goals, that they wouldn't get ripped apart on the counter as we did last time against Villa. Not so much this time, though they had their moments. Could we keep that sense of structure and control and having a spine and actually get into the final third on a regular basis and be creative and be what I think most people think is Arsenal DNA, creating attacking football, that's our vision for how we play football. And we've now got into the final third. Now we've got to get into the penalty box and be more ruthless, more effective. I agree with Tim's analysis of the Aubameyang Lacazette discussion and going forward. I think there's lots of logic for how we've played with Aubameyang. You can hear Tuchel talk about Timo Werner playing from the left because he has more space. You can hear Werner talking about it. I think we've maybe been a little harsh in our discussion on Lacazette and what he's contributed in terms of build-up and in the box. I think he's actually been pretty good recently, and there's some mileage still in that. I don't think he was ever going to do much against two big lugs of centre-backs in this particular game, so he didn't waste his time spending too much time in there. He dropped in, created play, and then did his best to get into the box thereafter, sometimes better than other times. So there's a whole discussion about, I think there's lots of logic for Lacazette through the middle and Aubameyang on the left. But for our future, given the players we own and the players who need to get on the pitch, Pepe, Martinelli, etc., I think you guys put it brilliantly that is what we need to learn to do, because those are the players we own, and Aubameyang running up and down the wing for the next few years is not the ideal use of him. So let's learn to play through the middle with him. He'll probably still drift out to the left before coming back in again, and learn to use the other players. And maybe it's, maybe we find a balance with Martinelli off the left as another attacker.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to learn there, but to me, there's obviously progress. I'm amazed how quickly we get frustrated that it's not good enough yet. Of course, it's not good enough yet. I mean, there are no magic wands. I don't aim this at at you, Elliot, or the conversation.
No, I think
it's
been brilliant the last few weeks. I
can live with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Take it from me, the pessimist, I'm really encouraged by the way we're playing mostly. I think the pushback people would have the right to say is, he's only been here a year and a half now. Why have we been pretty good for 6 games and he gets to escape with that judgment? By the way, that's not my argument. I'm saying that for the people who aren't satisfied by this little renaissance and wouldn't consider it such and want to view the larger context, they have that right to do it. There's a lot of football that was played before the Chelsea game that we've decided to ignore, and our reasons for ignoring it seems to be, well, he wasn't playing the 4-2-3-1 with Smith Rowe between the lines before that. And then the question is, why not?
Defense for him is all the extenuating circumstances. I mean, he had 47 players in his squad. It's probably going to fuck you up a little bit. Whether he played Ozil or didn't play Ozil,
and the
that
pandemic
was going to be a problem either way.
Again, you don't have to explain to me why these are unique situations.
And I'm not even saying that he doesn't have things to answer for. He's made lots of mistakes. I think he could have got here a lot quicker. But fuck it, a bit like the discussion on the striker thing and the players you own, you're at where you're at. I think he's a talented coach who's a brilliant communicator. And we're starting to play really well, but we're not very good in the box. So where's the rush to judgment?
No, let's see.
What else are we going to do?
The danger is, because I don't think you want to give coaches forever to figure it out. That's just not how football works. Even if you think they could be good, they don't get forever. The danger is if we get knocked out of the Europa League and, lose to Man City and Leicester in February, which could easily happen, and the Premier League season is over for us, there's nothing left to fight, and the Europa League season is over for us, even if he gets us playing better, it's going to be hard for anyone to come away from this season saying it was successful. And then what do you do? Pause on Twitter, pause my pants. Thanks, pause.
Bye.
Clive, final two things here. You typed something into the chat that I just want to give you a chance to touch on, which is simply that we should Vardy Aubameyang. I love this because, so let me say this. I think when people think of a center forward who runs in behind, they think, oh, that's for counterattacking. Like that a center forward can't run in behind from, open play, possession in the final third. Mesut Ozil always got credit. His genius was floating into space, finding space between the lines. Well, I think Aubameyang's genius is finding space, even where none exists, in the box, here and there. I mean, even in this game where he was kind of bad, he had a header he hit poorly from a really good position he found. He got his toe on a cross when he found the position, and he had another one that he kind of left from a good position. But again, the ball and Aubameyang always seem to be in the same place in the box, and that is a skill. So you said we should Vardy Aubameyang, a little less responsibility in the build-up, a little more focus on his movement and his end product. Is that essentially where you're going with that?
Yeah, Tim touched it. Just accept he's a low-touch player. Now we've got people around him, and I agree we need to have, we've got a number of people. We've got Odegaard, we've got Smith-Rowe, we've got Saka, we've got Pepe, we've got Martinelli. All of them want the ball. Good high-touch players. We need to make them more scorers. We need to have a central striker that we can really just let him be the central striker. Now, the problem is, and let's really do this, right? The problem is, he's a better idea in our head as a central striker than he actually is a central striker. So every time I try to convince myself I'm okay with him being Vardy, when he doesn't touch the ball, we don't get a chance to him, and he doesn't put his head where I want him to put it, I sort of retract, and I look at the numbers, and I think he scored more from the left. We stick him out there. Then when our build-up and creativity is lacking, I think, crikey, we need a creator out there who can score, and he's not really a creator. He doesn't link up. So there's a problem. There's a problem developing here that we've got to contract this guy. So I look at the forward group and I say to myself, what's missing? And what's missing is a forward that has got attributes that we haven't got. And I think we need to be thinking about a physical, taller, all-round player that is happy in that scenario at the weekend, because we've seen this a number of times. We need people that are happy in a crowded box that can, and I think it's a really important thing, that can go the channels with physicality, but link up play, but spin and turn around. You see what William Jose did to us for Wolves? He won that chest ball down, chested it and spun. That's what we're not doing. We're just chesting it down and saying that's enough. If you're far more aggressive with our movement into the box, to be in the box, to challenge people, to run through the lines, run into the box. Some of this can be coached and taught. And I think there's just an attribute missing. So we've got our Danny Ings in Martinelli. We've got that sprinty forward. We've got that Aguero, however you want to characterise him. We've got Pepe's like Amares. We've got our Kevin De Bruyne. We've got our Bernardo Silva in Odegaard and Smith-Rowe. We've got our Foden in Saka. Tricky winger forward. We haven't got that central striker. And I don't want to watch a game against Villa again and think the best forward in the pitch is on the opposition. You know what I mean? And I think that's not what Arsenal Football Club should be about. So Aubameyang, he's the guy we need to invest in, because we already have. So Vardy him. But then when he's not doing it, when the game scenario doesn't suit him, we need somebody else. Physical stature, control that central space, link up. And when they drop into their box, they're still worried. Because when Aubameyang and Lacazette are forced into the box, they're not always as devastating as they could be. And if you want a reminder of what it's like, just a quick reminder, I wasn't there, but I think Tim was, in Baku, how they were absolutely cut off once Chelsea squeezed the box. And if you remember that game, from that game onwards, we should be fixing that problem. And we haven't done. We just haven't done.
You know what it makes me realize? It Makes me realize why this whole stuff about, just buy good players, that sorts everything, or, you need backup. Squad is important. Like, we bought Lacazette, and then the very next window we bought Aubameyang. And by virtue of having both of them, we have tied ourselves in knots trying to figure out how to make that work. Oba on the left, rarely played through the middle, playing them both together, not sure, maybe Lacazette should start instead. And like, how much better would we be? Hell, even if we didn't get Aubameyang, which would break my heart, I love the player, and had a different player, and Lacazette was just the number 9 and we worked around it. I'd rather be the other way. We never got Lacazette. We had Aubameyang and a different player. But this is the irony. By virtue of having both of them, I think we've kind of fucked it a little bit in terms of how we've tried to use them.
The best scenario was we don't buy Lacazette, we hang in there, we keep Giroud, and we have Aubameyang, and then you've got your complete contrast for different game scenarios that can actually do their jobs properly.
And you have the Lacazette money to go buy something. But anyway, enough of that. We can get into that in the summer during an international break. We will rewatch some of the Villa game. We will do our Premier League roundup. We'll do all the usual stuff on Patreon. We hope to see you there, but if not, we're happy to see you here. Tim's on Twitter @Stilberto. Thank you so much, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Clive's on Twitter @ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot. Bot me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Give us 5-star review. Write nasty things about Paul since he's gone and you can't hear it. We'll also have Scott back on in a future podcast, of course. And just thank you so much for being here. We always enjoy the chance to talk about the Arsenal together through thick and thin. Interesting times. Leeds next. I think there'll be a lot of pressure for Arteta to bring Partey back if he's ready to face that Leeds press. But knowing that Benfica's around the corner and risking losing him again, it's going to be tricky. I'll be very curious to see how he picks the team on Sunday and if it has an eye towards Thursday. So still plenty to play for, but it's ticking away. I think back to seasons. I can remember a season a little while ago. Gosh, Tim, you'll probably remember the season. Within about 2 weeks, we got knocked out of the Champions League, knocked out of the FA Cup, and knocked out of a would-be title race under Wenger, maybe in the early teens, 10, 11 or something like that. And, this is one of those periods where whatever European Premier League aspirations we have and European aspirations we have, they're all going to be decided around that period of Benfica, City, Benfica, Leicester. So fingers crossed for that. All right, let's leave it there. We will be back with a regular pod on Friday and plenty of Patreon stuff between now and then. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10 leaves.